Welcome back. Now the Ferguson case, it struck many chords, but particularly we've seen, I gave the poll numbers last night, huge division, whether you want to just admit it or not, the facts are the facts. You look polls of blacks and polls of whites in this country, what they thought the verdict ought to be, what they thought was happened, and if they thought that justice was served. It is completely different. I'm talking about a gap of 30 and 40 percentage points just on the same questions answered strictly by race. And it has to do with how the African-American community looks at not just law enforcement, but the justice system. Now, we have seen the scenario of a white cop killing or severely injuring unarmed black men a lot of times here, too often here. You take the Rodney King case or the Sean Bell case. Many people growing tired of the scenario and the outcomes in the court. Now, in both the cases I just mentioned, officers, as you all know, walked. Now, the nation is focused on Officer Darren Wilson right now, the police officer accused in the shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown. For his part, Wilson yesterday spoke out to ABC's George Stephanopoulos about the incident and why he says he still thinks he did the right thing.
Is there anything you could have done differently that would have prevented that killing from taking place?
No.
Nothing?
No.
And you're absolutely convinced, when you look through your heart and your mind, that if Michael Brown were white, this would have gone down in exactly the same way?
Yes.
No question?
No question.
Something you think that will always haunt you?
I don't think it's a haunting. It's always going to be something that happened.
You have a very clean conscience.
The reason I have a clean conscience is because I know I did my job right.
In many ways, though, it wasn't Wilson's words that were the most incendiary. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, he raised a whole lot of eyebrows this week. In fact, he said this before the verdict even came down on Meet the Press on Sunday, when he got in a heated debate with Georgetown professor Michael Eric Dyson. And remember, he's not just the former mayor. We're talking about a former federal prosecutor. He's a law enforcement guy, Rudy Giuliani, and he talked about what he thought and also the rift between the police and the black community. Take a listen.
93% of blacks are killed by other blacks.
Let me respond to that.
I would like to see the attention. I'd like to see the attention paid to that you are paying to this.
The white police officers won't be there if you weren't killing each other. First of all, most black people who commit crimes against other black people go to jail. Number two, they are not sworn by the police department as a agent of the state to uphold the law. So in both cases, that's a false equivalency that the mayor has drawn, which has exacerbated tensions that are deeply embedded in American culture. Black people who kill black people go to jail. Black people who kill black people go to jail. White people who are policemen who kill black people do not go to jail. If a jury can indict a ham sandwich, why is it taking so long?
Richard, you know, curious your answer on this one, because you're the Black Republican Association on a national level here, right? When you hear a guy who was a presidential hopeful saying that, you hear a lot of the comments, you see the breakdown here. There is a huge gap, isn't there, in terms of how whites and blacks not just look at law enforcement, but the whole judicial process, isn't there?
Well, to Mayor Giuliani, I definitely would not advise him to say what he said like he said it. Point is, most crime on blacks is committed by blacks. Most crime on whites are committed by whites. 80% of crime is committed on a white person by another white person, 90% on a black person. That's fine. It's all tribal. So his point is not very well made. I mean, the other thing is that, yes, President Obama hinted to it also, that in minority areas there are higher crime rates. For example, in New York City, even though crime is decreasing, where crime is increasing is in public housing, and most of that public housing is filled with people of color. So there is a great need for police in that community, and there is also, very importantly, a great interaction between the minority community and police, and that's what we've got to check.
Well, that's the perfect segue for me, because, and this is one of those rhetorical questions where I'm trying to fish for the answer. What should our expectation be of police? Now, I want to take the Brooklyn shooting, okay, as the most recent example. 2 rookie cops right there in itself. I think we're asking for trouble, and I know they're trying to fix that, but 2 rookie cops going up a stairwell, dimly lit stairwell, dilapidated building, in the projects here, and the building's got a problem. He's got a gun drawn, guy comes out of a stairwell, unarmed, didn't do anything wrong, got shot in the chest. The cop didn't mean to kill him. The kid didn't mean to kill somebody that night, but he did. Imagine it was any one of the four of us, though, that was, sitting on that step. We instinctively, we think that it would be handled differently. If he was going into a complex that was overwhelmingly white, would he have had his gun drawn when it goes out? What should the expectation, because we're dealing with human beings who are cops, and you guys have been working with the police here on both sides of this. What is the fair expectation of a person? And I say it this way. If Richard was going up there, he lived in the complex, and he had a registered firearm, and he was nervous for his safety because of all the troubles that he sees in there, and he shot somebody coming out of the stairwell, he'd be treated differently than the cop would for doing the exact same thing, and he wasn't trained by the police department. Now, I'm not trying to hang cops out to dry, but should we expect more of them? Or should we expect less of them because by definition they have a job that they put their life on the line every single day they put their uniform on? And I'll start with you.
I believe we should expect more of them. We should expect that they're well trained, well supervised, and they put it right on the side of the New York City police car. Courtesy, professionalism, and respect. And that's what we should expect.
But we definitely need to. I mean, you're a trained police officer. You're not supposed to act like the public. Well, you're supposed to follow protocol. And for example, when police don't follow protocol, that's how people die. In the Sean Bell situation, 50 shots, you're not supposed to fire at a moving vehicle. That was the policy, but they did anyway. When you're a police officer patrolling NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, you're not roaming around the hallways with your gun drawn, because guess what? There was no call, there was no threat, there was nothing. Nobody said there's an armed guy in the hallway. You know, why do you have your gun out? When police don't follow protocol, people die.
But the problem with that is that they were told to patrol these stairwells. And I think they were told as well that they could have their guns drawn. Now, what he was doing, he was actually opening the door with the same hand he had his gun in. Nobody would dispute that we understand that police work under tremendous pressure, and we understand that there are going to come times when something is going to occur under that type of stress. But what we expect is from the supervisors. Just like we expect parents to raise their children in a responsible way, supervisors need to make sure these cops are trained properly.
But Doug, is the general rule of thumb that if, like, you know, in baseball, if it's a tie, it goes to the runner. If it's a toss-up in these cases, and you're going to a jury on this, the benefit of the doubt goes to the cop.
Are you talking about civil, or are you talking about criminal?
Criminal.
Well, if you're talking about criminal, there's a high standard there. And that's what we're talking about, tension, about unfairness. That's what all these examples are. People are feeling that the system is unfair to them. That's why a protocol, rules, and regulations that everybody agrees upon, we all have them, and training. And when we look at those rules and we see that they've been violated, that's when there's a problem. But if those rules are all obeyed and followed, there should never be any question that whether the person is of one race or another.
We're going to talk about this on the other side of the break here, and I'm going to get your phone calls, I promise. In Staten Island, those officers can argue that they followed protocol. You know, that now there's division. Is a chokehold legal? Is it not legal? But if you want to think that there was already going to be scrutiny on that case before, in the aftermath of Ferguson, just imagine the pressure going on and Mr. Leventhal's old job there in Richmond County as to how that grand jury is going to be handled here. And we're going to get into that. We also heard from the family, both from Ferguson, the Brown family, and also Staten Island family impacted here by the loss of the Garner family today. You'll hear that as well, and your reaction straight ahead.